everyone, this is Ao3 podfic, back with another podfic. Today I'll be home with frayed feathers by fictionforlife_NZ. This is, what is it now, like part 14? Yeah, I think part 14. We will start with chapter 29, The Challenge. It was almost ritualistic at this point, to weave and unweave the same lines of thread day after day, pausing for what could feel at times like hours, staring longingly at the horizon she hoped to one day see familiar ships on, stringing her hope back together with invisible threads to keep it from crumbling away entirely. She wouldn't lose her faith. She would not let them win. A shroud for her husband's father, then she would choose a suitor to take the place of the one who had never returned from war. That's what she had said all that time ago. She refused to properly keep count of the years since Odysseus had left, but she knew by her son's growth that she had staved them off for far longer than she'd ever expected to. The shroud remained unfinished, and the suitors filling her halls did not know enough about weaving to see through her lies. She wished she could do more, but the confines of her personal quarters were one of the only safe places left in her home. Every few days some would bang on her doors, demanding to see the progress she had made and speak with her about hurrying along her choice of food or crown. Each time she would sit still and silent at her loom until they gave up and returned to their rowdy feasting on the palace's food supply. In here she was safe, but in here she was also trapped. Before most of the servants in the palace had fled to find jobs where drunk men weren't grabbing at them or causing fights, she had made them move a guest bed into her weaving room. She rarely left this space, forced to guide her kingdom through orders passed between the gap under her door, fed by her son who risked the suitor's wrath to bring her meals where she could eat without 108 pairs of eyes watching her. She hadn't slept in hers in Odysseus' bedroom since the first of these vile men arrived, couldn't bear to cradle the empty space at her side and wake up to the old feathers strung through the branches of the tree, knowing there was a chance they would be all she ever had left of him. And if they ever did break through that door, then at least the beautiful space would never be tainted by such horrific memories. Time was running out. She knew that, and so did the suitors. They'd seen it, the storm out at sea, so close to Ithaca and yet just far enough away. It wouldn't be more than a few days before they would claim it to be a warning sign, one she had to heed lest her kingdom be brought to ruin by the gods. That storm was not normal, but she was uncertain whether it had been meant as an omen for her or for someone else. Things were about to change, and in whose favor she did not know. No more time left to keep up the facade with the shroud. It would not hold them off any longer. Something else was needed. It was time. She kept it locked in the closet with her collection of wools for weaving, the only weapon of his that had not been taken to war with them, his treasured Palatinos bow. He'd never be willing to let blood spill on it, and there would be few who would ever learn to fire such a complexly designed thing when there were better, easier options. The arrows in the quiver were fletched with feathers from his own wings, each one plucked and painstakingly trimmed from those severed limbs to be crafted into something he could use. That was her husband, always resourceful, never to let something go to waste. The suitors, the gluttonous and lazy pigs they were, may have some skill in combat, but they had never strung a bow like this. Odysseus had shown her a few times how to string and unstring it, so in the hands of an untaught man it was effectively useless. Penelope steeled herself up as she unlocked her door and stepped out the first time in days, clutching her husband's bow in one hand and the string and quiver of arrows in the other. On the way to the hall she summoned one of the castle's last servants, dear old Euryclea, and sent her ahead to set the axe heads up. The challenge was set by the time she entered the halls, and the rowdy crowds of men had grown mostly silent as she marched past with her head high and her eyes hardened. Not a single tear dared to try and slip through her mask. She hated every single one of them that dared look anywhere but her eyes. Slobbering like mutts scavenging in the den of a wolf who had not yet returned home to protect its family. But if they did return, the wolf would surely dispatch them all. If she was still in Sparta, she would have been that wolf, but here she couldn't. Here she had to play the part of the grieving widow refusing to let go, refusing to move on, even if she was willing to love anew, and if that day ever came may Aphrodite curse her for no longer being Penelope. She would not allow herself to, for a new king would not allow the bloodline of the old one to continue. She would not doom Telemachus to an early death. Her brilliant child, so much like his father, but without a wit as sharp, for he had nobody to sharpen it against. So willing for a world where he could bring change, and he would never reach that if she allowed the suitors to have their way. They planned to kill him. They had already forced him into a fight once before. She'd been so scared when his wings first grew in. They were beautiful, just like his father's, but grew far larger. Telemachus didn't want to cut them, and she did not have the heart to force him further away from the father he never got to know by making him commit such an act. Larger wings were harder to hide, and when Telemachus left his room, it was always swathed under layers of heavy fabric to hide them. The feathers could be a curse or something else entirely, if the suitors ever found out. She clamped that thread in her mind and severed it, refusing to dwell on the gruesome possibilities any longer. At least he wasn't here now. The suitors' anger would not be taken out on him, and when they failed to string Odysseus' bow, only she would be left to rage at, and by then she would be back in her weaving room. "Your Majesty!" one of them called, his voice thunderous and cruel. It was Antinous, the one who had beaten her son in a fight and nearly exposed his wings in front of them all. She had prayed in thanks to whatever gods had shown mercy on them for days after that. "Time is running out. A new man of the house must be chosen. So tell us, Penelope, what prompts you to grace us all with your presence after so long? Have you finally finished weaving that shroud?" "Yes," she lied, her voice cool with contempt. "But my time grieving has not allowed me to make a choice on who shall take Odysseus' place. So I propose to you all a challenge, one that will ensure only the right man, the one who is truly like my lost love, succeeds in his conquest from my hand." Many of them were leaning over the table, wide, hungry eyes following her hand as she pointed to the axe heads and then gestured to the bow. "Whoever can string my husband's old bow and shoot cleanly through these 12 axe heads shall take my hand and rule Ithaca with myself as their queen. My husband was able to do such a feat. Ithaca's new king shall have to do the same to prove their worth as a strong and capable leader." She left no room for argument, pressing on as some scrambled for their seats and approached the stand where she had set the bow and the string it required to work. "Let your arrow fly once you know your aim is true, as I would rather die than grow old without the best of you at my side," she declared, and took her leave as quickly as she had arrived. "I will return once a victor has been found." For once they did not try to block her, too focused on the challenge she had left behind for them, their long-awaited chance that would never allow them to succeed. Once she was back in her weaving room, she locked the door and sank down against the heavy wooden barricade that kept her away from the world she had once known and loved, pressing her hands over her mouth to muffle the cries as the tears began to spill anew. She wasn't sure how much longer she could hold out. If she was forced to let them go, she would never love again, not until she could reunite with him in death. She would not let it be any other way than with him. More time had been bought, but there was not much left regardless. Something had to give in this endless game of pushing and pulling that had become her life as Ithaca's queen. It could not end like this, waiting in her weaving room for a man that might never return, when there was a chance some suitor could grow lucky with the bow days or weeks from now, but she would continue to wait as her hope crumbled further. Wait until she could reunite with her beloved, in life or death. It was all she could do now. "I need to make sure they don't escape. I still haven't recovered enough to turn your palace into a maze, as fun as that would be, but I can make sure that the locks on all the doors leading out of your palace cannot be broken. It should give you plenty of time to chase them all down." "That's more than enough, but I need somewhere to corral them. The longer I'm running around, the greater the chance they can find some way of saving themselves. I can't let that happen." "Aw, you don't want to do some hunting with your great-grandfather?" "I want my wife and son." Fine, we'll find a place to drive them once we've gotten inside. And I have something that we can use to make sure none of them escape. Take a look at this." "Is that—" "I may or may not have snuck into Hephaestus' forge again while I was searching for you. Shame we couldn't use it on Uncle, but you seem to know what you were doing with this trident. Think it'll work?" "It feels weird." "That's the divine blood in you responding to it, dear. You don't have a lot, but you have enough to be affected by the power it holds. This is designed to stop gods, but for a mortal, this will burn." "Good. I'll set everything up for you. All you have to do is keep them occupied until the time is right to strike. Make 'em bleed, darling." "They'll do more than bleed. I'll make 'em beg." "Think your wings can carry you through this last stretch?" "I know they will." That was chapter 29. Now, on to chapter 30. Hold 'em down. Now, content warning, because this is Hold 'em Down. Yeah, so references and allusions to SA, some pretty horrible thoughts towards Penelope. Just warning. Because if you listen to this musical, Hold 'em Down is one of the, So, SA, that's the big one, SA. Also, Antinous as a person. Because, Antinous as a person. Anyway, let's get right into it. The sun had long since set, and And the bow remained unstrung. It had been passed around the hands of all 108 suitors twice now, and not one had come close to securing the string. Some had given up entirely on the challenge. After all, if the bow could not be strung, how were they even meant to go about cleanly shooting through 12 axe heads? The old king had been known for his cunning, which meant something had to be done to this bow to stop it from yielding to any of them. The queen thought she was clever, handing them such a technical weapon and acting as if it was anything but a ruse to keep them from the throne. But Antinous was smarter, and he would show her that. He waited, slouching lazily against one of the tables and nursing a glass of the palace's finest wine until the bow was presented to him a third time, and held it outstretched in his other palm for the others to gaze at. Many of them seemed confused that he was not making any attempt with the string still hanging loose from the bottom. Let the guards know he was a man of show and a man of pride, for he was worthy of Ithaca's crown, even if the queen did not see that. A willing tramp who would never yield to anyone but the old king. He must have been a good fuck to have her bound on such a tight leash even after death. He would not be fooled any longer. She would learn not to laugh at him, at any of them. Screw this competition, he scoffed, slamming the wineglass down and tossing the old king's prized weapon away like the trash it was. It landed with a clatter near one of the far walls, where it was picked up and examined by 2 pairs of grimy hands, beggars that had arrived about an hour into their attempts with the bow. Such vermin came frequently enough, and Antinous made sure they were driven out after scavenging a meal or two from the waste off the floor. It wouldn't be any good to let rats infest the palace, after all. Sometimes they could be goaded into fighting each other for a seat at one of the tables for the night. Such events were always entertaining, like watching insects battle over a crumb of bread. He doubted these 2 would be swayed to such action, given how closely together they huddled by one of the fires. The smaller one had been struck by a chair earlier when they got too close to Amphinomus, and the larger had nearly thrown a hand because of it. The only reason they were still here was because the small one knew their place and had tugged the other away, while Eurymachus convinced Amphinomus it was not worth the effort. He was tempted to yell at them to drop the weapon and leave, lest they be beaten within an inch of their life, but he decided against it. They weren't worth his time right now, not when there were more important things at stake. Let them keep the scrap of wood. Maybe they'd be lucky enough to find a use for it. I don't know about you all, he drawled, but I've had enough of all the delays. Can you not see this is yet another trick from the queen to keep us from what we came for? He paused, letting the words sink in. With each second he remained silent, he could see the realization dawning in their eyes, and the anger seeping into their expressions. There was a good reason as to why he was considered the group's leader. He knew how to stir his fellow suitors to whatever cause he deemed worth their time, and right now he only had 2 things in mind. That bow was simply another way for her to hold us down while the throne grows ever colder without a king. Some turned to look back at the discarded challenge. The larger beggar was holding the bow and trying, in an almost amusing manner, to tie the string to the other end. The smaller had hobbled off to where the quiver had been left, and was picking through the arrow slowly. Neither of them had heard the queen's decree, so they knew not the reason for it being here. They saw something of value that they could use, something that may allow them to find more food to fill their hollow little stomachs. Had the bow been stringable, he would have been concerned that the beggars were being given a chance to hold a weapon, but the king's prized weapon was nothing more than a glorified stick. The arrows were probably tampered with as well. Let them have it, a generous gift before he drove them out for good. As filthy as they would soon be his subjects. How long have we been here, growing older while that boy of hers grows stronger, so that he might one day take the mantle we came here for? Where is our pride and our rage? That child, the last remnant of the old king, was what truly stood in the way. And with each passing day that meek little wolf pup grew just a bit bigger and bolder. They'd already rounded on him once before and fought back, and his cheek had been smarting from their punch for a few days after that. The old king was a liar and a disgrace. He had died far away from his throne, weak and lost at sea. The boy would never amount to anything much, but even weak blood was still blood that had to be dealt with sooner or later. Now is the time for us to take action and seize control of the throne that bitch refuses to give up. Finish your cups, brothers, and channel that fire burning inside our souls. We must act while the moment is right. Haven't you noticed who's missing? A few of the others looked around, as if expecting the missing one to appear out of thin air and reveal who he was speaking of. They weren't all as smart as him, but they still had their uses. The prince is not around, he said, grinning as their eyes lit up in understanding. Else I imagined he would be here competing for his dear old father's throne, too. I heard he's on a diplomatic mission and returns today. He paused to take a leisurely sip of the wine still in his cup. How lovely it had been to drink it for so long. How much lovelier would it be when it was all officially declared his? I say we gather near the beaches and wait till he arrives. Once his ship is docked, we can breach it. My brothers, let us leave now so that today we may strike. The raucous cheers swelled amongst his comrades, and he stood up straight, the craze that stirred every time there was potential conflict already making itself known. And he hadn't even gotten to the good parts yet. Truly, a man of words he was. "What is your plan, Antinous?" Melanthius called, swaying slightly on his feet from all the wine he had indulged himself on. "Once we breach his ship, we find the prince," he began, tugging his favorite dagger from its sheath and toying with it in his free hand. "Hold him down so that we may break him. His pride, his faith, his trust, and his bones will all be shattered by us. And once we have had our fun, I shall slit his throat, and we shall cut up his body." He could see the bloodlust filling their minds, making the other suitors his perfect personal army. Some clearly had other thoughts of what would be done filling their heads. After all, there were plenty of different ways to break one's pride. The prince was far from being a man like them. "We can throw him into the sea," one hollered, and he smiled as they finally began to piece his plan together. And once the crown wonders what has become of their precious little prince, only we and the ocean shall know. He was careful with how he phrased his words, saying we instead of I. Eventually it would just be him and the sea that knew of the boy's fate. But first his personal following would have to go. There was only one throne to be claimed. It wouldn't be too hard. A feast to celebrate the crowning of the new king and the demise of the old bloodline. A final meal for the other suitors once the poison took root. Then it would just be him, Antinous, husband of Penelope and king of Ithaca. "And once the deed is done, there will be nothing left standing between us and the queen," he announced, raising his half-empty cup as if celebrating what had yet to be done. "Nobody will be here to stop us from breaking her bedroom door and taking what we have waited for so long, her love and everything else she has denied us." She would learn her place, beneath him. No amount of screaming, crying, or pleading would sway him from taking what was his. He would make sure he knew that it was because she was wicked and unmannered as a woman was not meant to be. That what could have been a welcome embrace was forced to be cruel and relentless because she had refused to bow down, and he would enjoy it because he had finally beaten her and all of his stupid little games. It would be hard to deny him his throne when he had already made her carry the next heir. He would let the others have their fun with her after he'd made sure she had taken, lest the queen ever try to think she was above them ever again. He would fix her, and he would fix Ithaca. He would make this little island into something great, something worth being remembered. He would be remembered. "This is our chance. Let us take action for our long-awaited spoils. To the beach!" He had whipped them up into a frenzy, smashing furniture and downing drinks so that they could take up arms, and all he had to do now was pointed where he wanted it to go. The prince would be dead before the sun rose upon the next day, and the crown would be secured before it had a chance to set again. "That's the spirit!" he shouted. "Channel the fire inside of you. We shall be held down no longer." He swung himself upon the table, fist raised and dagger flashing against the torchlight as he surveyed his brothers. This was their night. "For our pride! Tonight shall be the night the queen's games end. Prepare yourselves, comrades. Tonight we—" The hiss was not audible over the cheers, nor the projectile obvious amongst the dancing shadows of the suitors. 1 second he was on top of the world, his reward just within reach, and the next he was choking, blood spilling from his pierced throat and splattering from his mouth as he sagged forward. The pain was like nothing he had ever felt before, and the sensation of hot liquid spilling up out of his body and denying his air was gut-churning. He collapsed on the table, head lolling off the side as red pooled on the stone floor below. All the other suitors had grown silent, shock replacing the excitement and viciousness he had stirred prior. He could barely register them, though. All he could see were the two figures standing tall and proud against the back wall. The beggars had strung the bow, and they had fired it. Heads turned slowly to survey the killers as his life bled away onto the ground beneath him. Gone were the rags and the filth that had caused them to cast aside their eyes, and in their place stood winged beasts like nothing they had seen before, splashed in gold and red, that told stories of battles that had been fought just to reach this very place. The last he saw before death was the smaller one's eyes, burning gold and blue in the torchlight, and the final thought of how he should have chosen his words more carefully, seeing as the old king had been in the room this whole time. And that, my friends, was chapters 29 and 30 of I'll Be Home with Frayed Feathers. The slaughter of the suitors has begun. I love the slaughter of the suitors because it's so violent. I love violence. Physical violence, obviously, not SA. I don't like hearing about SA or any of that shit. I think it's absolutely fucking disgusting. Anyway, I love violence. Okay. So, do I really have anything to talk about? I don't really have anything to talk about. Oh, we only have, 6 chapters left of this fic? God, I started reading this fic so long ago, and now we only have 6 chapters left. Well, technically there's 8, but the last 2 are a thank you note from the author and like a Tumblr link. So if you want to see those, go to the fic. Okay, so tomorrow I start a summer school thing. Like I start a summer school in a town like a little ways from mine. So they're already out of school, but my school actually isn't out yet. We have 3 days left, but we're not really doing anything. So I figured it's fine to skip it for summer school in the town because I'm gonna do an animation thing. So I'm gonna do like animation program. And I also have more summer league volleyball. So yeah. Also, if I make any like cool animation things, I might post them here. Like if they're too short, I'll probably post them as shorts, and then if they're not, I'll post them as like actual videos. So I still don't know what it's gonna be, but I'm sure I'll have at least one project to share at the end, hopefully, maybe. But I think it'll be cool. Anyway, that's all for this. I can't wait to get into the Slaughter of the Suitors the next time I read this, because I love the Slaughter of the Suitors. The Slaughter of the Suitors. Sorry. English. Yeah, English. It is my first language, but, English. English. Okay. So, I think that's all. I hope you all enjoyed this fic. I hope you have a good night or day wherever you are. And I think that's it. So, bye!